Thanks again, Dave, and here we are again, our summer of wisdom, our summer of fun. It's been fun. I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed having all of these different reflections and being able to talk about them on Zoom after. This morning, we're talking about wisdom and friendship, and this one's a particular fun one. We've got Susan joining us, and John is joining us, and he's got a little special treat I'm excited about in his reflections, so we'll get to that. Why don't I kick things off here with a reflection on friendship. Francis Ward Weller says this: a friend can tell you things you don't want to tell yourself. Proverbs 27:6 says, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. I gotta be honest, I find friendship to be one of the great mysteries of life. I mean, I'm not sure why some people form bonds and others do not. It's like this puzzling mystery to me. But while it's a mystery, here's what I'm totally and completely convinced of. With absolutely no doubt in my mind, I'm convinced one of the most immediate, obvious, and tangible experiences and proofs of grace we can find this side of eternity is the absolute joy of friendship. If you've ever wondered to yourself, how can I experience tangibly God's grace in life? My response would be immediate. Consider your friends. They're such an obvious sign of grace and the gift that is living and existing. Now, as Sarah reminded me on our first week this summer, it's good to define our terms when speaking of something, right? So here's how the dictionary defines friendship. It's a relationship of mutual affection, a bond richer than mere association. Friends enjoy each other's company, express their feelings to each other, and make mistakes without fear of judgment from the other, which I suppose about covers it, right? I mean, if you can find that in life, well, you're doing all right. What else can be said about friendship except that experiencing these kinds of relationships is just a gift, it's joy, and I suppose at risk of saying too much this morning, let me add a few additional comments that I hope might give us some wisdom around how friendship functions as tangible evidence of grace. To start, I would say this. I think the truest and deepest forms of friendship only exist among people who are actively practicing virtue, like we've been talking about this summer. What do I mean by that? I mean, consider a gang, for instance. A gang is something, group of people. They might have similar interests and desires and things they want to accomplish. But in my mind, a gang is very different than, say, a circle of friends. It might be the same as well to talk about a platoon of soldiers or a group of people who share the same ideologically pure beliefs. They might all think the same way or have interests or at least aspire to that. So it's their common ideas and beliefs that bring them together. But friendship is more mysterious to me than that. And I think if I could point to one thing, it would be this. True friendships may have many things in common, including hobbies or beliefs. But what marks true friendship is that friends, I think, always bring grace to the table. What separates true or deep friendship from gangs or soldiers or platoons or ideological allies or even acquaintances, I think, is the existence of grace in their circle, in their midst. Which is also why I think true and deep friendship can be so rare. I think whenever we feel like we have to be on guard around people, worried that our actions or words might end up with us being judged or shamed or even worse, gossiped about or talked about behind our backs, it can be hard to find friends that we truly feel safe with. And it is hard because with friends, when grace is not on the table, when it's not brought into the group, it can rob us of, I think, the deepest levels of friendship. And so I think friendship are always, the best ones anyway, are always grounded in grace. Like this, like Lawrence Peter says, I've mentioned this before, you can always tell a real friend when you've made a fool of yourself, he doesn't feel you've done a permanent job. I think true friendship exists when we feel safe. And to be honest, in my experience, that can be rare. Because I think many of us, right, we've got this fine radar for those that we feel judged around or unsafe around, people who won't give us the grace of being allowed to be the fool from time to time. But when that is there, when there is trust and grace, in my mind, it's like an exercise in divinity and the DNA of the universe. I think my idea of friendship is founded in my understanding of a Trinitarian God. God itself is a shared existence, three but one. And so whenever we find ourselves in communities of grace and friendships of grace, to me, it feels like participating in the very flow and essence of life that is inside the Trinity. So it's a sacred thing, a complete gift of grace. And yet, even still, right, we know meaningful friendships, they're really hard to come by. We all want it, but it can prove elusive and difficult. And I think we all know why that is. We are all so different from each other. Each of us is unique, and we're quirky and we're weird and we're odd, and we have these idiosyncrasies. And because of that, we're all rather cautious in giving our trust and allowing people to access kind of what's deeper within us. It's not easy to find friendships of kinship and trust. And to me, it leads to a great reflection for myself. It's this: how safe am I for others? How safe am I? Do I come across as safe to others? When I think we are safe with others, we can cultivate those deep friendships. Safety and trust, the ability to see others not at their greatest and still remain with them, is, in my mind, such a necessary ingredient for deep friendships. And yet friendship, of course, is more mysterious than just adding a few simple ingredients. There are so many factors, like the season of life we're in, vicinity, who's close to us, shared experiences, personality differences, common interests. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's no exact formula for friendship. It's more complicated than that, which is again what makes the existence of it at all such a gift. I think in the end, though, this is what so intrigues me about friendship. It's a profound mystery. So many odd ingredients, hard to explain. I mean, why certain people connect and form deep friendships, it's beyond any wisdom I have. But I'm incredibly taken with this quote because I think it points to something. W.H. Auden says this: "Among those whom I like or admire, I can find no common denominator. But among those whom I love, I can. All of them make me laugh." You know, in my own experience, this certainly rings true for those I consider my closest friends. Why they make me laugh, I don't really know, but to me, laughter in any relationship is almost a sure sign of trust, of safety. It's a sign of a bond that's strong enough for guarded folk to let down their guard. When I think of Kristen, when I think of my closest friends, this rings true. They make me laugh. And that, to me, is an indication of a deep bond of trust. Friends remind me not to take myself too seriously. They've got a way of speaking into my life that I find both challenging and sobering. I mean, they remind me of the proverb that says, "Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." From a friend, a wound can be trusted, because ultimately, I think it's couched in grace. And in my own experience, it's also often couched in laughter. What a mystery friendship is, but also what a gift. And of course, in this life, friendships will never be perfect. Like any relationship, there's misunderstandings and unintentional hurts that happen along the way. But I will say this: once found, a deep friendship with another human is quite simply one of life's pure joys. Accept it as such a gift. Friends are worth celebrating. They're worth working for. They're worth receiving as grace. And so let me encourage myself, you, us, if you know this deep kind of friendship, it may be worth telling them once in a while what a gift they are to you. And so may we all know the riches of deep friendships, and may we all work to be the kinds of people who always bring grace to the table of our friends.
Hi, friends. Today I would like to share some wisdom I've learned about friendship. When I looked up the definition of friendship in a formal dictionary, it reads, "the state of being friends." Now that's not too helpful. Then it gives some synonyms for friendship: benevolence, brotherhood, charity, cordiality, friendship, kindliness. Now, as I read those, while they are all good qualities for acquaintances and neighbors in general, they do not really strike me as being what I would differentiate in a true friendship. When I looked at the Urban Dictionary, I found this definition. Friendship is when you love someone with every ounce of your being and genuinely want them to be happy, even if it means sacrificing something yourself to make them happy. A true friend is someone you can talk to about your feelings, someone you can tell things you could never tell your family or even your partner. They are someone who you don't have to talk to, but someone you want to talk to, someone you will go out of your way to be with. Now, this really rings true for me. As I considered each of those aspects of friendship, the word that came to mind that summed them all up was vulnerability. In the original formal definition of friendship, each of those synonyms like benevolence, cordiality, charity, they all seem to come from a position of power, of security, comfort, and distance. But in the urban definition, those statements come from a position of no power over another, but with a closeness that involves risk and intimacy, of vulnerability. So what does the dictionary say about vulnerability? Well, it's the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally, capable of or susceptible to being wounded or hurt. So to be real friends with someone, I am suggesting that we by nature have to offer up our vulnerability, which means we have to risk being wounded or hurt, laughed at or rejected. But looking at that as a worthwhile risk in the face of the possibility of those rewards of intimacy and acceptance. But is it worth it? Well, that's what we each have to decide whenever we choose to be friends with someone. When I looked through the book of Proverbs, I found two that talked of friendship. Proverbs 18, verse 24 says, "Some friends play at friendship, but a true friend sticks closer than one's nearest kin." And secondly, Proverbs 17, verse 9, "One who forgives an affront fosters friendship, but one who dwells on disputes will alienate a friend." Both of these imply a sense of intimacy which requires opening oneself up to vulnerability, showing and sharing one's fears and failings with the risk of being rejected or hurt. We all know the courage and vulnerability it takes to forgive someone when we've been hurt. There is a risk when we forgive that the other will take advantage again or feel that they have the upper hand. But this wisdom counsels us that the way to foster friendship is to open ourselves up to that vulnerability that comes from offering forgiveness, not denying the pain that we have suffered in an affront, but by exposing it in its rawness, and in a sense then offering the other cheek, as Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. In that statement of turning the other cheek, I don't think Jesus was encouraging us to actually invite further physical abuse, but he was instead asking us to demonstrate a willingness to show forgiveness to the other by offering up that vulnerability to being hurt again, and so invite them into a friendship rather than further confrontation or rejection. When I was a young adult, I did not really have any friends. The only acquaintances I had, I associated through whichever current boyfriend I had at the time. In looking back, I realized that I had a critical issue with vulnerability. Having had some early childhood trauma, as well as a deep need for perfection and control, I never felt comfortable enough with anyone to allow them close to see me vulnerable and flawed. It always felt easier to stand back and present that facade of controlled perfection so as not to risk real friendship with anyone, which would put me in a position of vulnerability, of having to say, I am not perfect, and therefore, in my mind, not lovable. Ironically, it was as I returned to faith in my 30s that I learned the gift of vulnerability through the perfect love and friendship of Jesus. In John 15, Jesus reveals that as his disciples, he considers us friends, not just servants. And as the ultimate friend, he invites us into a friendship in which he lays down everything and makes himself vulnerable to our rejection and disdain of him. And he feels it's worth it. In Philippians 2, we hear from Paul just how Christ took that risk of friendship for us. I like the Passion Translation version, which reads, "He existed in the form of God, and yet he gave no thought to seizing equality with God. Instead, he emptied himself and he became human. He humbled himself and became vulnerable, choosing to be revealed as a man." Think of it. Christ had access to all this magnificent power and prestige of the Creator God. He could win us over in a second with that. And yet he chose not to exercise or exploit that power to win us over, but just become one of us as a friend, vulnerable and weak, susceptible to all kinds of shame and rejection and hurt. He risked everything and ended up dying on a cross as a demonstration of just how far he was willing to go in his desire for our eternal friendship. So what brought me back and kept me rooted in my faith is not all the theology and rituals and demands for right thinking, but it is the simple wisdom and truth in the example of Christ and his demonstration of his friendship with me. I came to understand that not only did he offer up his own vulnerability to win my friendship, he became the perfect friend in whom I could feel safe in showing my own vulnerability before him. And I was never rejected or scorned. I was loved. And so as I learned first to trust Christ in his acceptance of me in that vulnerable state, over the years I learned to risk letting my guard down with a few chosen friends. And as I've done that, I have experienced the deep rewards of knowing that I am loved and cherished by those good friends who see me in all my flaws and foibles and my failings, and they love me just the way I am. I read this quote on vulnerability. "It's deeply poignant that we should expend so much effort in trying to look strong before the world, when all the while it's really only ever the revelation of the somewhat embarrassing, sad, melancholy, and anxious bits of us that are what makes us endearing to others and can transform strangers into friends." In real friendship, there is that inequality in status. There is no inequality in status. I admire things about my friends, and in those things, I actually look up to them. But it is in the sharing together of our little quirks and foibles that draw us together, each lovingly face to face in that endearment, as that quote says, that we can embrace in true friendship and love. And so in this community of faith at Nexus, I pray we each can strive to be true friends with one another, willing to carefully open up in vulnerability to one another, trusting that we have one another's back, and we can grow and flourish into a community of love that continually invites others in as friends on this journey in life together.
Good morning, Nexus. I'm happy to be here with you in this pre-recorded message. I've always enjoyed hearing different insights from around our community, and I just wanted to say I'm honored to be a part of our summer series. I have to admit I was a little hesitant when Brad asked me if I wanted to speak on wisdom literature in the Bible. And my first thought was, I don't think so. But after talking it over with Sarah, I had to admit it also sounded like a stimulating idea, and it could be a good antidote for my addiction to endless doomsday scrolling, reading about this pandemic and all of the racial tensions that have been going on, being brought to light in North America. It's been heavy. And so yeah, it goes without saying that in general, actually, my outlook in life has been a little more negative lately. I think some of that's a reaction to stress, but some of it's been a choice too. And so I'm hoping to maybe tie some of those negative feelings, expectations in life into my topic this morning, which is friendship. So a little bit of history on Sarah and I. We moved from British Columbia just about 7 years ago back to what is my hometown in Kitchener. We'd been living on the West Coast for well over a decade, and I hadn't lived in Kitchener since I was 20. So we left behind a close circle of friends. We were very comfortable there. And essentially we had to start over here in Kitchener and develop new social circles, meet new friends. And we found that attempting this in our 30s is different than, when you're younger. Even when you're in school and university, when you're a kid, you run up to some other kids on the playground and say, hey, let's play this game I just invented. 2 hours later, you're friends. You're going to each other's birthday parties, whatever. But I found as I've gotten older, friendships take more time to develop. Maybe I'm a little more suspicious now. I'm less quick to jump into friendships, and I notice other people are too. I think actually that some of the negativity that I was referencing earlier does tie into that. I feel as we mature, we begin to develop expectations for what our life should be, and along with that, who our friends should be. And when those expectations aren't met, it can be a downer. And for me, in many ways, the core disruption of COVID-19 has been the loss of all the hopes I had for the year. Trips I'd planned, business plans that were in place, set aside, and it's just been grappling with that throughout the entire year. And I think that in friendship too, this is a key thing. Expectations can often choke out potential friendships. They look a little more like we have expectations about how soon people should communicate with us, how much somebody should talk about themselves in a conversation with us, when's the appropriate time to ask about my family or my job, or what questions are too personal. And, I guess I found that sometimes these sorts of expectations can prevent us from making new friends. We end up making assumptions about what a friendship could potentially look like. And if you told me 7 years ago when I moved back to Kitchener that a lot of my core friends would be coming out of a church, I probably would have scoffed at you. I figured I was done with church, and now many of my closest friends in Kitchener are a part of Nexus. And Sarah helped me to kind of deal with my expectations of what church could be like. Nexus played a big part in that too. I think friendship's kind of like food. It's good to keep an open mind. You never know what you're going to like. And, Proverbs 17:9 says, one who forgives an affront fosters friendship, but one who dwells on disputes will alienate a friend. And I wonder how many perceived affronts in our life are just misguided expectations. I think it's good to have a core set of principles about how you want to be treated in life, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Sometimes people who talk a lot about themselves are nervous, and you get to know them and things balance out more. Keeping an open mind has brought a lot of joy in my life, and a lot of my negative assumptions about people or about myself are some of the first things that begin to make me feel lonely. So I just want to thank Nexus for being a community of friends, and I look forward to continuing to get to know many of you. And I have a little song for all of us this morning on friendship. It might be a little bit on the nose, so forgive me, but I'll give it a shot here. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Boy, you got
friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got troubles, I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We stick together and we see it through, 'cause you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. Some of the folks might be a little bit smarter than me, a little bit bigger too, maybe. None of them will ever love you the way I do. It's me and you. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. Oh, you got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
Thanks, Susan, for that great reflection on friendship. And thank you, John, especially for bringing that playful. I loved you adding in the song there. That was fantastic. Thank you for bringing your reflection and song on friendship to us this morning. Let's continue the conversation around friendship. Would love to hear what more of us are thinking. So if you're available and able, why don't you hop on to Zoom with us to carry on the conversation? The link is below, and hope to see many of you there. For now, go in peace.